I'm delighted to welcome today Louise Bowditch, who is an all-round good egg. There's lots of things you do, Louise. So clinical hypnotherapy, rapid transformation therapist, amongst others. So where would you like to start? Tell us about one of those things and then we can work through.
I think I should say that I'm not a RTT. So I'm not a rapid transformation therapist. I haven't trained with Marissa Peer. So I'm a rapid change practitioner, which is just a different name for using sort of cutting edge and neuroscience to enable people to move forward from their stuck state, whatever that might be. So.
Okay, neuroscience. We're hearing a lot about neuroscience. So for the benefit of the listeners, what is neuroscience?
Neuroscience is the study of the brain and how it works, and then how we're influenced by how our sort of evolutionary brain has, how evolution has changed our brain, or some parts of our brain, not all parts of our brain, but yes. So neuroscience is the study of how the brain works.
So that would fit into the various different therapies that you do. The clinical hypnotherapy obviously that's really
yes.
In-depth stuff. So with the clinical hypnotherapy, what type of conditions do people seek you for to help them with?
Well, I think the issue that most people are struggling with, that I seem to see and help through, is anxiety. Anxiety seems to be where people are really struggling at the moment, and so I have seen a lot of people and it manifests itself in different ways, and the causes can be different, and everyone has their own story, and everyone has their own history, if you like, as to how and why and when anxiety started to really impact their daily lives. But it's definitely anxiety based.
Typically, it seems to be that anxiety starts when we're young, never gets dealt with, never gets discussed. So I'm hearing a lot of the practitioners that I interview all going back to childhood. So is that the same kind of pattern that you've experienced as well?
Yes, well, I'm actually a solution-focused hypnotherapist, and so trained in solution-focused hypnotherapy, which means that we are always looking to find a solution. It sort of does what it says on the tin, rather than, or at least the framework of, rather than re-examining the past in too much detail. And I subscribe to that way of doing things to a certain extent, but this is where I probably differ to some of my solution-focused hypnotherapist colleagues, because I believe that you can't really ever get to the crux, if you like, of what has caused the anxiety and how to disempower the hold that it has over you if you don't look to the past to find out potentially where it started, how it started, and then diffuse the hold that it has over you, really. So I do believe in finding out the root cause, if you like. So, but it's always done within a solution focus framework. So we might look back, but we don't talk about the problem for hours and hours and hours. Obviously, clinical hypnotherapy is different to counselling and talking therapies. It's slightly different. So that's, we have some, hang on, how can I put it? We look back to the past. We look to find those key moments that are still having an impact because of how our brain works. We create templates of behaviour. So we need to look back and find those templates where they started from in order to sort of be able to take someone forward.
So it's a balance, isn't it, really, about not uncovering the past to the point where it's so debilitating and painful that they can't move forward. So, and that's where the skill of your training and experience comes in, I guess. What's the difference between clinical hypnotherapy and the rapid transformation change thing that you do?
So I mean, what's in a title? I mean, does it really matter? No, it absolutely doesn't. It just gives, I think, people who are looking for some help and support an idea of what I get up to. So clinical hypnotherapy is based in neuroscience and entails a certain sort of set of protocols and techniques that are used and employed to help someone move forward, to help them get out of suffering and start to, live a life that, they want to live toward, and move them towards their goals, if you like. And the rapid change therapies that I use are a different way, but to get to the same goal. So they're using more, I wouldn't say unusual methods, but they're using more sort of cutting edge, and some may say that they're a different kind of modality, but the end goal is to support the client through a journey that gets them from a stuck point A to the best possible place they can be at point B.
Excellent. So how did you get into this? It's not exactly sort of a 9 to 5 50-year gold watch sort of profession, is it? So how did you get into this, Louise?
Well, I think I probably got here over the 50-year period of time, because I'm now 54, and I have struggled myself with anxiety, with difficult situations and trauma. And it's taken me a lifetime to get to a place where I feel that I can use all of my experience in a positive way. And so I experienced some hypnotherapy a couple of times in my life. Didn't really think about pursuing it myself until I did a sort of I don't like the word self-improvement, because, hey, we're pretty okay as we are, but it was a self-development course, and that actually was with Marissa Peer, who does offer the rapid transformation therapy. But I did one of her courses for self-improvement, and that was quite a few years ago, and it was at that point that I started to think, this really interests me. And so that's when the seed was sown, and from there I sort of found myself, and I got here, I don't know, organically. I don't know how to describe it, really. I kind of ended up here, and I'm thinking, gosh, I wish I'd found this sooner, but I'm loving it now I'm here. So
brilliant. I'm a great believer in time is so important, because how often do we say, as in our 50s and 60s, and I'm in my 60s now, but how often do we say, if only we'd known this? But it's impossible. It's a ridiculous statement, because we couldn't possibly have known it, because we hadn't lived it. And we have to live something in order to go through it, to be able to reflect back. So,
indeed, yes, yeah. Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it doesn't. Some people, it doesn't help. They don't seem to learn the lessons. But for a lot of us, when we can reflect on what's happened in the past, but also see the patterns, because we're creatures of habit, aren't we? And we do tend to repeat the same patterns. But definitely. It's not until people get to a point of such pain, they have to change, that they then wake up and go, oh, I've been doing this all my life. If I change, things might improve. So luckily we've got the help of people like yourself to call upon. So what are the key things that you see often? What are the key conditions? You've mentioned anxiety. I mean, what other things that people see you for?
So fears and phobias, obviously they're based in they're an extreme form of anxiety related to a specific thing or situation. So fears and phobias. What else? I have dealt with PTSD, which can be very challenging, obviously, particularly for the person in front of you. They're going through something very difficult. But anxiety seems to be, the biggest chunk of my work, but it does manifest itself in different ways. So stress can cause anxiety can cause stress. It's a resistance to what is really stress. And because of how our brains are, our primitive brain, that sort of brain that we have inherited, if you like, from our primitive ancestors, when our brains, that central part, that primitive brain, hasn't really changed that much to cope with a modern day life. So we have learned all sorts of amazing things, and we have the neocortex, which is where we are able to, the left prefrontal cortex, our personalities and our ability to learn languages and interact with other people and all of those things, fly a plane, etc., etc. But our primitive brain still has a huge influence over us, and the part of the primitive brain that causes the sort of fear response is something that is easily triggered by stressful situations and negative thinking. So negative thinking can lead to anxiety, and long-term anxiety can lead to depression. So there's a whole host of different ways that a client will present, but if you kind of strip everything down to its bare minimum, if you like, it often stems from fear or anxiety. So I would say it's difficult to say it's one thing apart from fear or anxiety.
You used anxiety and stress in the same sentence. Are they one of the same? And you mentioned one leads to another, you know, back and forth, so on. So, I mean, are they really, really different things, or are they two words for the same thing?
Well, good question. I don't know. I've never really looked at it like that. Stress is really created by our resistance to what is. So it's about wanting something to be different to how it is. So whether that's your job, your relationship, your weight, the physical features, we can, by wanting that change, by wanting to have things different to how they actually are, causes this undue stress and suffering, I guess, is another way to put it. So having the ability to allow that resistance to go and just accept the way things are doesn't mean to say that you can't look to change them, doesn't mean to say that you can't find ways to deal with it effectively and move forward. But stress itself, I guess, can cause the anxiety because it's triggering the primitive response in the brain. And so when we're stressed, we're producing the stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. And adrenaline and cortisol are part of the system of the primitive brain that, you know, we release those hormones when we're frightened, when we're scared, and when we're anxious, you know, when we're trying to get away from a dangerous situation. So I wouldn't say they're the same thing. I would say that they trigger a very similar response in the body. Consequently, the outcome or the symptoms can be very similar.
It's amazing how we're learning so much now about the brain, but also about the brain-body connection, and how, you know, the mind-body, the gut connection, you know, the whole thing, that we are one huge jigsaw puzzle with Absolutely. So many different routes to how we can you know, put the pieces together. So when you mentioned about the depression side of things and the anxiety and so on and so forth, with the work that I do, I do mineral imbalance assessments and blood analysis and that type of thing, along with my health mentoring. And a mineral imbalance can cause the same effects, the same symptoms rather. So for example, magnesium, if you have too much magnesium or too little magnesium in relation with certain other minerals, that can cause fatigue, it can cause depression, and it can even lead to suicide in thoughts in some situations. So we've got so many different ways, and I'm really excited about all the connections that we've all got, because we all know different therapists, and when we have somebody with a certain situation, I can tell through the underlying causes through the testing, and then point the people in the right direction for the different therapists, because I'm not a therapist as such. I'm a detective, shall we say, and I find the root cause of problems and then signpost. So it's wonderful to have people like you that we can direct people to. So what would be your kind of top tips for people to help to keep some kind of sanity in their lives? As you mentioned, the world we're living in is designed to create anxiety, you know, from tiny things to massive things, and there's obviously a scale in between, but on the assumption that we all have some kind of anxiety level somewhere in our lives, what would you suggest are maybe the top 3 tips?
Well, I think the first area of lifestyle to address, if someone was looking to address and ease their own anxiety levels and stress levels, if you like, without going down the sort of pharmaceutical route, shall we say, would be to look at sleep. Sleep is so important. It has a huge impact on our waking life. And it's when we process the day's events. So if we don't get enough of the right kind of sleep, so we're looking for a rapid eye movement sleep, because that helps to process the day's events. It helps us to convert an emotional situation, an event that we've experienced. It helps to convert it into a more rational and a memory that we have more control over. It sort of depotentiates the emotion from it and allows us to be have more perspective. So you've heard of the phrase, "Oh, let's sleep on it." Sleep on it and see how you feel in the morning. That's exactly why, because our brains go through a process in, every time when we sleep, and we've got to make sure we're getting the right amount of sleep. So depression can cause us to sleep more and more, and consequently our brains try and work through everything that's going around in our minds, and causes us to wake up feeling absolutely exhausted, because REM sleep is actually a very what they call enervating. So it's really energy heavy, takes a lot of energy to process the day's events. And so we end up, okay, we might get 8 hours sleep, but we end up feeling very tired and fatigued. And of course, if you wake up and you can hardly get out of bed, it's not the best start to the day. So that's a cycle that can continue. And when we have anxiety, because the hormones aren't being produced enough, we're producing no hormones at all that help us with our feel good factor, etc., serotonin, endorphins, etc. And so depression can really affect that, make us sleep more, and we end up feeling worse. And then with anxiety, we're producing too much of the not so good hormones, those stress hormones I mentioned, so adrenaline and cortisol. And so that can affect our sleep. So that will make us wake up. We'll have difficulty dropping off, or we'll wake up and we can't get back to sleep. And so again, we wake up, or we find ourselves in the morning not having had enough of the right kind of sleep. So we're grouchy, we're tetchy, we're on the back foot already. And of course, the cycle continues. So it's getting a really good handle on sleep. And within that, I would say it's about sleep hygiene. So it's looking at your screen time close to bed. It's about ensuring that you don't necessarily watch the news right before you go to bed when there's all sorts of doom and gloom, and finding a routine that works for you. Everyone is different. Some people are night owls, some people are early morning larks, but it's about finding a routine that really works for you, that enables you to get enough sleep, of the right sleep, to help. And I would say that's the number one tip. And then I think it's also about letting go, choosing your battles, so to speak, whether that's at work or at home, relationships, etc. It's about finding ways to allow things to kind of wash over you when they don't have a really bad impact on you. If there's something that's happening at work or a relationship where it's having a really negative impact, then yes, you obviously need to be able to approach that and deal with that. But it's about letting go the things that, don't sweat the small stuff, basically. And then my third tip would be to use what we call in solution-focused hypnotherapy, which is the 3 Ps. So it's a bit of a cheat, really, because I get to have 3 extra things here all in one point. And that is positive thought, positive action, and positive interaction. Because when we have those 3 things in our life, we end up being able to cope better, because it helps with the production of our feel-good hormones. So positive interaction is our connection with others. And it's one of our basic human needs, connection. And so some people enjoy other people's company, some people find it more of a challenge, but it's about having a connection or connections that are right for you. So that you can feel that it's a shared, human life is a shared experience. So I would definitely look for your tribe, whether that's online or in person. Obviously a bit more difficult in these COVID times, but yeah, I would say positive interaction is something that we should be looking to achieve. Then positive thought, again, it's about letting stuff go, looking for the joy. Gratitude is huge with positive thought. So gratitude and forgiveness, because that allows you to move forward. And then positive action is about moving your body in a way that feels good. a lot of us are sedentary, working from home a lot now, working in front of screens. And it's not about running a marathon or doing, you know, hour-long workouts at the gym. If that's your bag, brilliant, go for it. But it's not my bag, that's for sure. So walking, for me, is moving my body in a way that I enjoy. So it's finding something that allows you to physically move, because as you said so eloquently earlier, our minds and bodies are not separate entities. Everything is connected. And there's other tips as well, because you know, obviously, and you know, from the nutrition angle, from the supplement angle, there's lots of different ways that you can improve your chances of maintaining, you know, strong, resilient, emotional and sort of mental health. So
absolutely. And then again, that links with the work that I do with the disc behavioural profiling, because you've mentioned, you know, different types of interaction. For some people, having a party, myself, that's one of my ways of positive interaction. In fact, I'm just organising a lunch with a number of friends next week. So that to me is a positive interaction, whereas for some people that's their worst nightmare. They want to, you know, sneak away. So we've got the differences in behaviour with extroverts and introverts. And sometimes when people have an introvert and an extrovert behaviour in their own profile, one minute they want to be outgoing, the next minute they're introverted. Depending upon the context of the situation, their body, their mind will choose whichever is the appropriate behavior at that time. So yeah, there's so many aspects to look at, and it's, as I say, it's wonderful that we've got so many experts now. And sleep, a friend of mine is a wonderful sleep specialist. So whatever the thing is that we all identify with, there's somebody out there now that can help. And it's wonderful with all of these natural therapies. As you mentioned, you know, without medication has a place for some people at certain times, and but a lot of the time Mother Nature has the answers, and we just need to tap into it, see what's right for us.
Definitely.
So any last thoughts before we close, Louise? It's been lovely speaking with you and learning a bit more about what you do.
I think I mentioned it very briefly, the art of gratitude, and I started a gratitude journal back in December 2016. It was in fact a 30-day challenge for the month of December in 2016, and I haven't stopped since. And I do talk about it a lot. It has brought such positive change into my life. And so I would encourage, if someone is looking for that first small step, just to change the way they feel about themselves or life in general, it would be to start a gratitude journal. Start with what you've got, notes on your phone or a diary or a notebook, and just look for 3 things during a day that you can be grateful or thankful for. And I'm talking about your first cup of tea or coffee, finding a parking space, you know, which can be really, really something to be really grateful for when it's busy. A blue sky. We've just had 3 days of beautiful weather here in the UK, and it has been an absolute joy, and I didn't take it for granted any of those days, because we've had so much grey, and we've got grey again today. So I really do highly recommend finding just a few minutes every night. Excuse me, I do mine at night time before I go to bed, and just look for those 3 things, obviously. And the thing is, the amazing thing is, as soon as you start to look for 3 things, within a couple of weeks, you'll be finding 5 things, 6 things. I've had to move from a A5 diary that was a week to a view, a week views on a double spread. I'm now on an A5 diary with a page a day, because there's so much that I can still be grateful for, even when other things around me are difficult. So yeah, gratitude makes what we have enough, and can really, really have huge life-changing properties if done regularly and consistently.
Absolutely. So I'm not one for writing in journals. I've tried several times, but I'm just not disciplined enough. But I talk to myself. So when I'm driving around in the car or walking along, I'm looking at all the beauty around me and thanking, you know, to be able to hear the birds and see the sunsets or sunrises or whatever it is. And yeah, absolutely right. And it lightens our mood, doesn't it? It makes us feel lighter and more comfortable in our own skin.
definitely. It helps with your positive outlook. It gives you hope and something to look forward to. And it allows you, even on the toughest of days, even when you have to dig really deep, it does allow you to see that there is still so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Well said, and a lovely note to finish on.
Mm-hmm.
So where do people find you, Louise? Websites, Facebook and things like that?
Yes. So I have a website, louisebowditch.com, nice and easy. And you can find out more about the different kinds of therapies I offer there. You can also book a 30-minute complimentary discovery call just so we can have a chat and see if we're a good fit to work together. And I also have social media profiles on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. So I'm contactable in quite a few ways.
Wonderful. Can you spell your surname for the benefit of the listeners who aren't looking at your spelling on the screen?
I can. I'll do it the old, I'm married to an ex-naval guy, so I'll do it in the whatever that alphabet is. Mm-hmm. It's Bowditch, which is spelt Bravo, Oscar, Whiskey, Delta, Indigo, Tango, Charlie, Hotel.
Lovely. Louise Bowditch, thank you very much indeed for your time today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks very much for having me, Elaine. Thank you.